Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020. Today I'm going to talk the latest with the coronavirus, discuss the Kyle Larson situation that I forgot to address on the show a few days ago, a big trade in the WNBA, Masked Singer Lego Masters finale, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, my 2016 NBA redraft. Alright, first we'll talk about the coronavirus. Adam Schefter broke news earlier today that a couple members of the Los Angeles Chargers organization have tested positive. One member tested positive and two others are showing symptoms of it. And according to Schefter, owner Dean Spanos, general manager Tom Telesco, and head coach Anthony Lynn were not amongst the groups testing positive or showing symptoms. So I guess it's more like underneath those guys. Hopefully those three gentlemen, or women, in case some of them are actually women, get well soon. And another coronavirus-related item is that Donald Trump today is speaking with all the sports commissioners, as well as a couple owners, and Jerry Jones, Mark Cuban, and Robert Kraft, about the reopening of America and when should sports be back. I think this is a pretty big deal because I think Trump is very optimistic about the opening of America being sooner rather than later, and I'm a half glass full person too, so I agree with him, and those are all great gentlemen that are helping him, in Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban, Robert Kraft, Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, Gary Bettman, Rob Manfred, Dana White, among others as well. Okay, now I want to discuss the situation that happened with Kyle Larson. He got suspended by NASCAR indefinitely due to using a racial slur during the iRacing. He came out with an apology statement saying that's no excuse, and went on, and then ultimately he was fired by Chip Ganassi Racing. So NASCAR did the right thing, in my opinion, of punishing him. There's no excuse for that, especially what we're going through right now as a society. A similar incident happened with the New York Rangers. Keandre Miller was in a Zoom chat and a fan used a racial slur repeatedly, and the Rangers are rightfully investigating who that was because the person who did that was obviously anonymous. So Kyle Larson was supposed to be a free agent at the end of this NASCAR season. He just cost himself a lot of money with that. That's for sure. And he's a good driver, too. And he's somebody that won the Rookie of the Year in the Xfinity Series and the Rookie of the Year in the Sprint Cup Series the next year in 2013 and 14, respectively. And now he just got himself in a whole lot of trouble and cost himself a whole lot of money. I don't think we'll see him race if NASCAR resumes this year. So it's just an unfortunate situation in NASCAR. All right, now I want to discuss a trade in the WNBA that happened early this morning. The New York Liberty had traded Tina Charles to the Washington Mystics in a 3-team deal with the Dallas Wings. So the Mystics land the big star in Tina Charles to go with Elena Delle Donne. The Liberty get Taylor Hill, Shatori Walker-Kimbrough, and 3 draft picks. That is a lot for Tina Charles. Tina Charles is a great player, obviously, but that is a lot for a star player. And you've seen this a lot around the offseason in the WNBA. A lot of big-name players traded for multiple draft picks. It's kind of reminiscent of the NBA a little bit in some of the tradings of their big stars from last summer and all the draft capital involved. So the picks involved, the 12th overall pick in this draft, and first, second, and third round picks in 2021. And then the Liberty subsequently traded the Mystics 2020 pick and their 2021 second rounder to the Wings for Taylor Hill and the number 9 overall pick and the number 15 overall pick. So I think New York made out well for getting a package and a superstar. And obviously they have the number 1 overall pick, and they're going to draft Sabrina Ionescu, who was obviously the very best player in women's college basketball this past season. Obviously was somebody that has a great personality, somebody that is very caring. I think she'll handle New York very well. There's going to be a lot of jokes how she's the best basketball player in New York. So I think the Liberty made out well for Tina Charles. I was interested to see if they were going to keep Charles and pair her up with Ionescu for a year and see how it worked out. But no, the Liberty clearly want to rebuild around Sabrina Ionescu and a couple of guards and go small. And obviously the Mystics, I think, come out of this as one of the favorites to win the championship. Obviously, they're going for the back-to-back here. And then the Wings get a couple good players and a good draft pick as well in this trade. So I think that the teams that made out the best were the Liberty and the Mystics. The Wings I thought made out okay, but not as well as New York and Washington. Now I want to talk about tonight's episode of The Masked Singer. They have finally stopped taping up to this point. I think that they're obviously taping these episodes back in February and in early March, and then the last episode they taped was the episode where the kangaroo got unmasked, and it turned out to be Jordan Woods of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. So I think that is the last episode they taped, and then they stopped taping due to the coronavirus, and then tonight, this episode is going to be a sing-along of past performances from this season, and they will be throwing out some new clues as well. And to recap the contestants that are left, we are down to 7. They broke them up 4 and 4. So the next real episode we'll actually see will be the banana, the kitty, the rhino, and the frog. And then last episode we saw the turtle, the night angel, the astronaut, and the kangaroo. And obviously kangaroo got voted off, and it turned out to be Jordan Woods. We're probably not going to be talking about guesses in terms of the contestants really much, but they are revealing new clues tonight, and if anything stands out, then I'll talk on tomorrow's show about any changes I've made to my current guesses of the remaining contestants. So the Night Angel, I'm still sticking with Kelly Rowland. The Turtle, I'm still sticking with AJ McLean. The Astronaut, Jesse McCartney. The Frog's interesting. I have a funny feeling it could very well be Bow Wow, but I'm still sticking with my Alfonso Ribeiro guess because it's just the voice. I don't think that's Bow Wow's voice, so I'm going to say it is Alfonso Ribeiro, although clues point towards Bow Wow. So that's one, the Ribeiro one's not one I feel as good about anymore because clues are hinting towards Bow Wow. Banana, Kid Rock, I don't feel strong about that either. I have no idea who the banana is, but if I had to guess because of the clues and a little bit of vocals, I'd say Kid Rock. The Rhino is, I believe, Tim Tebow, current Mets minor leaguer and former Broncos and Jets quarterback. And then Kitty, I think, is Kristen Chenoweth of Wicked, because she obviously dropped a hint of the tree from last year. It was Anna Gasteyer, who was also in Wicked. So I think that is Kristen Chenoweth, the kitty. Now I'm going to talk about tonight's episode of Lego Masters, which is the finale. Obviously, it's the same three pairs because they did not vote anybody off. If they did vote somebody off, it would have been Tyler and Amy, who I think have been the best pair all season long. So part of me thinks that there could be a conspiracy about that they purposely did that because it was Tyler and Amy. But we'll see. So Mark and Boone, Sam and Jessica, Tyler and Amy are left remaining. I think Tyler and Amy are going to bounce back and win. They are supposed to create the epic master build yet. And it's supposed to say the two remaining duos. It's actually the three remaining trios. So, or the three remaining duos, my bad. And then I think the runner-ups will be Mark and Boone, and I think in the bottom place will be Sam and Jessica. And Sam and Jessica really did come a long way from how they began the year. They were at risk a lot, and then they really turned it around to get to this point. So, good on them, and I'm very excited to see how this plays out. Now I want to talk about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. New show tonight. Will Forte will continue his show from last week. And then Nikki Glazer will also go tonight. And there's also going to be a never-before-seen moment from the show's past. So that should be pretty fun. Obviously, Will Forte is playing for the Pangea Network, which is helping out women in Kenya and the United States, and his help buddy is his dad, Reb Forte, who I think has done a solid job helping Will out thus far. I'm interested to see what Glazer plays for, and I'm interested to see who Glazer brings along as a guest for help. So, should be a very, very fun show tonight. Now I want to talk about my 2016 NBA redraft. Interesting order. There were a lot of unexpected all-star breakouts this past season, which rose people's stocks. And meanwhile, in the later end of the first round, it's only a one-round redraft, obviously. There's a lot of busts in there that were lottery picks and guys that are maybe 9th or 10th men on some teams. So, without further ado, here we go. Number 1, Philadelphia 76ers, Ben Simmons. No do-over here as the Sixers take the best guy available in their own guy in Ben Simmons. He really, along with Joel Embiid, has transformed the outlook of this franchise going forward. He's somebody that can play multiple positions and can guard very well. I still think that he has more to his game that he hasn't unveiled yet. And I think some of that's because of Embiid's presence. But I think if Philadelphia ran their offense through Simmons, then you would see his fulfilled potential. Number 2, the Los Angeles Lakers. Brandon Ingram. No do-over here as the Lakers take Brandon Ingram. He's somebody that is in the midst of a breakout season with the Pelicans as the Lakers dealt Ingram away with a lot of other pieces to get Anthony Davis. 3, the Boston Celtics. Pascal Siakam. Siakam really introduced himself to the NBA world last year as he won the Most Improved Player. And who the heck knows, maybe he's going to win it again for this season as well. Siakam really has emerged as a franchise guy for or at least a borderline one for the Raptors this year after the loss of Kawhi Leonard. And imagine Siakam and Jason Tatum as your forwards. Instead, they took Jaylen Brown, which was not a bad pick whatsoever. For the Phoenix Suns, Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis is in the midst of a breakout year this year, which landed him an all-star nod for the Pacers. He was someone that was drafted by the Thunder and then was dealt away in the trade that landed the Thunder Paul George. And now that package for the Pacers looks a lot better with 2 all-star players in Oladipo and Sabonis. And the Suns with Sabonis and Devin Booker would have been pretty interesting. 5, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Oh, by the way, the Suns took Dragon Bender instead. Yikes. 5, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jaylen Brown. So Jaylen Brown falls to the Timberwolves at 5 as he becomes a building block for that team, along with Karl Anthony Towns. Or maybe they package Jaylen Brown to the Bulls for Jimmy Butler, and the Bulls have themselves a piece in Jaylen Brown. So there's a lot of what-ifs with that selection. Instead, the Timberwolves took Chris Dunn. 6, the Pelicans. Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon was also in a breakout season with the Indiana Pacers. He was the Rookie of the Year in the 2016-17 season, but that wasn't a strong rookie class that year. So they wound up giving it to Brogdon, who was a big help for the Bucks in his tenure there, and then he was signed and traded to Indiana, and he and Sabonis and Oladipo are a nice little big 3 there. And him on the Pelicans would have been interesting with Anthony Davis at first and now with Zion and the pieces they have. And instead they took Buddy Hield. Not a bad pick at all. 7th, the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray. So no do-over for Denver as they take their guy in Murray. He's somebody that's a little flawed, but still is somebody that has a lot of potential and really has had some moments in playoff games before for the Nuggets. 8, the Phoenix Suns, Buddy Hield. So Buddy Hield drops from 6 to 8 in the redraft, and the Suns are doing backflips for this pick. And Buddy Hield, Devin Booker, Domantas Sabonis, the Suns would be enamored over that as their core. And instead, the Suns took Marquise Chris in that spot. 9th, the Toronto Raptors, Karis LeVert. So with Siakam off the board, the Raptors go with Karis LeVert. LeVert is somebody that has really showed himself into a good starting role in the NBA with the Nets. He had that unfortunate injury a few years ago and really has showed flashes of that guy that he was, but I still think he's a good asset and could become that guy again going forward. Instead, the Raptors took Jakob Poeltl. 10, the Milwaukee Bucks. Fred VanVleet. So with Malcolm Brogdon off the board, the Bucks go with Fred VanVleet, who is an undrafted free agent signed by the Raptors and has been a big part of their teams these past couple years, a big part of their title run, and now a big part of their season this year as well. He would have fit fine in that Malcolm Brogdon role with the Bucks and Giannis and Chris Middleton, and that's somebody that they probably wouldn't have been able to sign long-term as well. Instead, the Bucks took Thon Maker. 11, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Malik Beasley. So the Thunder go with Beasley, somebody that was a good role player on the Nuggets, and then the Nuggets dealt him away to Minnesota in that very wacky trade that sent Robert Covington to Houston. And I don't know why Denver was in that deal, but that was just bizarre. I just thought that Denver gave up a lot in that deal with the 2 pieces they gave up. And I think those 2 guys will help the Timberwolves going forward. And that's why I keep saying that they got a lot for Robert Covington. And then Beasley would have been somebody that would have helped out the Durant and Westbrook Thunder. But here's the catch. this was the year Durant left for Golden State, so he would have been a big help to the Russell Westbrook, and then eventually Paul George led Oklahoma City Thunder. And if he was on the Thunder now, he probably would be coming off the bench for them, just like he was with Denver and was with Minnesota. Because the Thunder, even after those trades of Paul George and Russell Westbrook, still have the solid starting five of Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, Steven Adams, and I'm blanking on who's in the small forward spot. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's Terrence Ferguson, which isn't great. But Beasley would have been a nice contributor off the bench for the Thunder for sure. And instead, the Thunder took Domantas Sabonis, which was an excellent pick. And the irony is that Orlando had that pick, and then they traded it with Oladipo to get Serge Ibaka, which turned out to be a bad trade. Number 12, the Atlanta Hawks. DeJounte Murray. So, the Hawks take DeJounte Murray, somebody that is a good starting point guard in the league. Unfortunately, he had that injury a few years ago that hurt the Spurs and his development. Instead, the Hawks took Taurean Prince. 13, the Sacramento Kings, Dorian Finney-Smith. It's crazy that Finney-Smith's a lottery player in this redraft, but here we are. This is where the draft gets a little worse, but Finney-Smith is somebody that's been a good contributor, whether it's in the starting lineup in place of Kristaps Porzingis when Porzingis is injured or off the bench. He's been a good contributor for the Mavericks this year, and he would have been a solid bench player or even spot starter for Sacramento as well. Instead, they took Georgios Papagiannis from Greece. 14, the Chicago Bulls, Ivica Zubac. Zubac is somebody that was in the starting lineup for the Clippers this year as their starting big man. He was somebody that the Lakers traded to the Clippers inexplicably. And I still, to this day, question that trade for the Lakers, because he certainly would have helped them, and I like him better than JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard from an upside standpoint, but that's just not how LeBron fits and Anthony Davis fits. So that's why they had to go with what they have right now. So it's understandable now looking back, because I don't think at the time they traded Zubac, nobody thought that they were a lock to trade for Anthony Davis. But I forgot what they got back in that return. And I just remember killing the Lakers for that. But Zubac would have been a solid starting big man for the Chicago Bulls, too, as at the time they were entering the last run of their win now. They traded Derrick Rose that summer to New York. They let Joakim Noah go with them to New York. They acquired Robin Lopez, but that trade was made after the draft. So maybe they draft Zubac, and maybe he's a backup at first, and then eventually becomes their starter. And instead the Bulls took Denzel Valentine. 15, the Denver Nuggets, Alex Caruso. That's crazy that he's this high, but here we are. Great backup point guard for the Lakers. He certainly would have been a good backup to Jamal Murray off the bench for Denver as well, although they have a good one in Monte Morris, so I can't fault them for that. But at the time, this would have, if they chose Caruso here, I think people would have went nuts. But we're doing a redraft, so if they're redrafting, this, I think, would have been the selection. And instead, they took Juan Hernan-Gomez, which was not a bad pick. 16, the Boston Celtics, Juan Hernan-Gomez. Role player, now on the Timberwolves. He was in that trade that sent Robert Covington from Minnesota to Houston, and there's a lot of pieces going in different places. Clint Capella to Atlanta was a part of that trade, if I'm not mistaken, as well. But that was a huge trade at the time, and Hernan Gomez was somebody that always had high upside for the Nuggets, but really didn't live up to potential. So maybe the change of scenery to Minnesota will help him do wonders. And instead, the Celtics, and if Juan Hernan Gomez was on Boston, I think he would have been a good reserve there. Instead, the Celtics took Gershon Yabusele. 17, the Memphis Grizzlies, Taurean Prince. So Prince falls to them at 17. Prince is somebody that Atlanta took in the lottery. He's somebody that is a solid two-way guy that fitted what the Hawks wanted to do at the time. And then they shipped him to Brooklyn in that trade that cleared all the salary cap space for Brooklyn to go out and sign Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And he's somebody that came off the bench for Brooklyn. And I think that Taurean Prince would have been better off as a starter. But I think Brooklyn is just the team that obviously wants to make their star players happy. And I think that he's somebody that I think Kenny Atkinson could have gotten more out of, and I think would have been a solid piece with the Grizzlies at the time, and obviously right now as well. And instead, Memphis took Wade Baldwin. 18, Detroit Pistons. Furkan Korkmaz. Korkmaz is somebody that's a role player for the Philadelphia 76ers coming off the bench. Solid three-point shooter. He's somebody that has some good moves. I think he would have probably been a bench guy in the spot starter for Detroit. And instead, the Pistons took Henry Ellington. 19, the Denver Nuggets. Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl was obviously a lottery pick. And Poeltl was somebody that Toronto ended up trading in the Kawhi Leonard deal. And Poeltl spot started for the Spurs. And Poeltl, maybe in this theory of redraft, he's a trade piece for the Nuggets. And maybe he's dealt to Minnesota in that deal. And instead, Denver took Malik Beasley. Not a bad pick. 20, the Brooklyn Nets. Danielle House. House was somebody that was an occasional spot starter for the Rockets. Good three-point shooter. Really came into his own this year and probably would have been a possible starter for Brooklyn at small forward just for this season, and probably would have been a bench player with Durant. And instead, Brooklyn took Harris LeVert. So that was a solid pick at 20 with LeVert, obviously, who I had going in the lottery. Number 21, the Atlanta Hawks. Bryn Forbes. Forbes is somebody who's a reserve for the Spurs. Started on occasion. Solid defender. Classic Spurs player in my mind. And I think would have been a nice little backup to Trae Young. Instead, DeAndre Bembry was their choice. 22, Sacramento Kings. Marquise Chris, somebody who was obviously a bust with the Suns. Went to the Warriors and showed some flashes, obviously getting those minutes on the Warriors because of all those players injured. Showed a little bit of his potential, so maybe he would have been a fine reserve on Sacramento. Instead, the Kings took Malachi Richardson. 23, the Boston Celtics. Derek Jones Jr., somebody who spot starter and reserve for the Miami Heat. Probably just would have been a reserve on Boston. Instead, the Celtics took Ante Zizic. Not a bad choice. Number 24, the Philadelphia 76ers. Patrick McCaw, good role player on the Raptors. Would have been a good role player off the bench for Philly too. Instead, they took Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who's on the Nets right now. 25, Los Angeles Clippers. Thon Maker, lottery pick, falls to them in that spot. Maybe he would be a backup center to Montrezl Harrell. And certainly was somebody that didn't live up to expectations as a lottery pick with the Bucks. Clippers took Bryce Johnson in that spot in the real draft. 26, Philadelphia 76ers. Damian Lee. Lee was somebody that was a good reserve for the Warriors this year. and occasional spot starter in the 2-guard spot. Good 3-point shooter. Would have been fine coming off the bench for Philly. But he plays the same position as McCaw. Unless if they would put Lee at small forward and McCaw at the 2, or just spot their minutes if they had both of those guys. Instead, Philly took Furkan Korkmaz, so that wasn't a bad pick. 27, Toronto Raptors, Ante Zizic. So they take Zizic at 27, who falls to them from the Celtics. Somebody that showed some promise the first couple years in the league with the Celts and then with the Cavaliers after the Cavs got him in the Kyrie Irving deal. Now he's still on the Cavs but hasn't seen minutes because of the presence of Tristan Thompson and Andre Drummond. And instead the Raptors took their franchise guy now in Pascal Siakam. 28, Sacramento Kings, Chris Dunn. So Dunn falls to them from the lottery to here. Dunn was somebody that showed some moments with the Bulls, but proved to be a little aberrational. One of the bigger busts over the last couple years. Obviously, it was a part of the package that netted the Timberwolves' Jimmy Butler and makes the Chicago package for Butler look worse. Maybe backup point guard for De'Aaron Fox here for Sacramento. And instead, they go Scalabicier. 29, San Antonio Spurs, Scalabicier. So he goes one spot down to the Spurs. Would have been a backup big man for them like he is right now in the NBA. Instead, the Spurs took DeJounte Murray, which was a good pick. 30, Warriors, DeAndre Bembry, somebody that the Hawks took. Was sent down to the G League a few times. And sometimes up in the NBA. Shown ability to shoot the 3-ball, and somebody that had some upside as a good 3-and-D guy really hasn't lived up to it. Maybe if he was on that tanking Warriors team this year, maybe he would have had some minutes there at the small forward position. Instead, the Warriors took Damian Jones. All right, now I'm going to do my top 10 players of the 2018 NBA calendar year. That's it for today. I was supposed to do my top 10 NBA games and players of the calendar year 2018, but I'm going to hold that off for tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm also going to do a mock draft, and then I'm going to hold my 2016 NHL ReDraft on Friday, as well as a couple other activities for you. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.